Persons outside the core team often wants to get as much new functionality as possible built by the team. But they don't always know about the other types of work a team must do to keep things top-notch and sustainable. And they don't know about how they're all connected. This can lead to some confusion. And this confusion leads to decisions and priorities that are actually counterproductive and actually gives us even less time left for building new cool functionality. Now that's not what anyone wanted, right? Tune is a way to talk about this. It usually leads to a shared understanding and makes it easier to talk about work that might have been swept under the rug or done under the radar. Come along for the ride in this 12-step series about Tune and how it might help you actually getting more time for building new cool stuff, and in a sustainable way. Let's look at some different types of work a normal team has to do, and that is key parts of the Tune concept. The team has lots of new cool stuff to be built, in order of priority of course. Sometimes they need to fix something that broke, or do some other unplanned work that pops up, regardless of how the day was planned. The team has to handle their debt too. Make sure debt isn't created, or pay off some old debt. Debt is explained in a separate video, but in short, we can say it is work we leave behind now and have to pay for later. Then we have to do some experimenting, at least if we want to be in front, and not keep building on technology that was cool when we stopped experimenting. Then there are meetings, trainings, days off, etc. that take some time too. And all of this has to fit into our working time, which is usually not that extendable if we want to be sustainable. There can be other types of work as well, but let's go with these as generic ones. Next step is to look at how much of our time we can spend on building new cool stuff. As long as we don't extend the total working time by working overtime, hiring more people, or just inventing longer days somehow, then we're stuck with whatever work time we have. Then we take away the time for other stuff, such as meetings, trainings, days off, etc. Those days we can't produce that new cool stuff anyway. And we take away the time we put on unplanned work as well, since taking care of what we already built is usually more important than building new stuff. Then there is the debt. Let's take away the time we need for the needed debt handling. This can mean so we don't create more debt, or paying off at least a bit of our old debt. Oh yes, and then there is some important experimenting time too, so we don't build lame stuff. Let's take that time away as well. Well, now we do the math, and whatever time is left is the team's capacity for building the new cool stuff in a sustainable way. We will soon look into what happens if we try to neglect one of those types of work in order to get more time for building new stuff. But first, let's look at what debt is. Debt can be many things. It depends on what the team works with. But as we said before, it's work we leave behind now and have to pay for later. Here are a few examples. Things we do to maintain a solution so it keeps working well. Documenting solutions so we remember how they're built and why when we go back to them in the future. Refactor or rebuild solutions that were done hastily so they are easier to maintain and less prone to fail. Make sure our solutions keep up with technical evolution that surrounds it, like upgrades and such, but also sometimes move the solution to a completely new technology to avoid cornering ourselves. Build test cases for a solution so we can test it faster and more reliably when changing it in the future. And doing all of those things for our tools as well, so they are up to date and in a good shape. Debt can be so many things. When we talk about debt here, it is an umbrella for work we have to do later if we don't do it now. And if we don't do them, we will suffer the consequences. Actually, next up is to look into what happens if we ignore our debt. All the work types are in relation to each other. When you change one, some other will change too, since we're stuck with our fixed working time. So if one increases in time, we have less time to spend on the other types. So what will happen to the others if we decide to decrease or completely ignore our needed debt handling? Yep, you're right. If we don't take care of that debt, something will probably break and create more unplanned work. And then, since we don't have things in order, that unplanned work will take longer than needed as well. Bummer. So, if the unplanned work takes more of our working time, what will we have less time for? Right again. If unplanned work takes more of our time, then we have less time to build new cool stuff. Which sucks, because we're all in this to build new cool stuff, right? Now, who wants to ignore the needed depth handling? But wait a minute. Could we decrease the time we spend on blue experiments and keep our level of green new stuff? Let's look into that next. Stay tuned.